Displaying text is absolutely essential whether you're a beginner or an advanced Three.js developer. One simple example is if you're trying to build a game like Wordle. A text-based game obviously requires you to render text in a 3D scene. Another more subtle example is if you're trying to build a piano. Now in this case, adding text is not required, but it can really go a long way in helping beginners understand how the piano is laid out. And finally, most games from Flappy Bird to Snake to Pong require you to display a scoreboard on the screen. So if you're going to display a scoreboard, you need to display numbers, which is basically text. Learning how to display text in Three.js is super useful, and in this video, we'll do just that. Let's jump right in. It's just as a quick reminder, if you just want to get straight to the code, you can just go to the Three.js repository on my GitHub, and here I have all of my tutorials. Anyways, we're going to start off with the base 3D cube in our scene. So from here, let's see how we can load a 3D font into our project. First, let's import the TTFLoader and the font loader. Both of these are basically different types of font loaders. And we're also going to want to import the text geometry because each letter is going to have its own sort of geometry. Let's make sure that we hide the box mesh, and let's take a look at how we actually import the font. Now this is basically about 15 lines of code. So first you create a new font loader, and then you pass in the typeface JSON file. Fortunately, Three.js already has a couple of different fonts that it comes with. So I'm just going to be using one of these as the example, which is Droid. And in most cases, this is probably enough for most of you guys, right? You just want some basic text on the screen. This function basically does all the heavy lifting. And once that is said and done, just create a new text geometry. And this text geometry takes into two things. First is the text that you want to display, and the second is some text geometry parameters. Now, the only thing that you really care about is passing in the font right over here, the font that you just loaded. But these two other things I am sort of changing just so we can see it more clearly. We create the material and the text mesh, which takes in the geometry, and I'm just going to reposition it. And now let's add it to our test scene. Once I save the page, we get our basic little hello world. This is usually enough for most people because, you could just use this default font and use it to display the scoreboard or, whatever you want to do. Sometimes though, you do want to take it an extra step and use your own custom font. So let's take a look at how we can import a custom font and display it on our 3D scene. How do we import a font? So here I just went to JetBrains.com and I just found their font and I pressed the download font button. So once you download the JetBrains font, you're going to get a file that looks like this. And once you unzip it, you can go to the fonts and pick the specific font that you want. So here you can see inside of the font loader folder, I created a fonts folder. And here I am importing the JetBrains mono regular font, which has the file type of .ttf. A lot of fonts, when you try to download them, they end up being in TTF form. Here we're going to create our TTF loader and pass in the JetBrains mono regular .ttf file from the fonts folder that we just added. Now the main difference between this loader and the font loader is that this gives you a JSON. You're still going to need to use the font loader that we initialized before, but here the font loader is just going to parse this JSON and then it's going to give us the font. So basically you're just adding one extra line of code such that you can work with TTF fonts inside of Three.js. And then everything else is the same. Here we create the text geometry. And again, the main thing here is passing in the JetBrains font to the text geometry as a parameter, and everything else is basically the same. So once I add that to the scene and refresh the page, you can see the JetBrains font at the bottom over here. So yeah, that's going to be it for today. Hopefully now you guys have a better understanding of how font loaders work and also how you can import your own custom fonts to display in a Three.js scene. If you made it this far, then I'd really appreciate it if you could just hit the like button and consider subscribing for more suboptimal content about Three.js and 3D programming. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.